I don't have a problem with the WNBA players asking for a raise. The WNBA is on a hot streak. I don't care about the previous 24, 25 years. As an investment, it's starting to pay off. And so this week they wore T-shirts saying, making a statement, you better pay us. But instead of just leaving it at that, a Kelsey Plum for LA had to take a dig at Caitlin Clark.
Kelsey Plum was just put in her place by Colin Cowherd. To be honest, it was past time for someone to say it. Plum chose to disparage the one person in charge of their recent success. Even though Caitlin Clark is literally turning the WNBA from a failing league into a lucrative machine, Cowherd didn't hold back. And you'll be shocked by what he disclosed about the WNBA's simmering jealousy. What exactly did Cowherd say then? Furthermore, how can he compare Michael Jordan, his royal airness, to Caitlin Clark? Please leave a golden goose remark if you agree with Caitlin. Come on.
The T-shirt, just United Front, was determined this morning that we had a meeting for. And, not to tattletale, but 0 members of Team Clark were very present for that.
Oh, boy.
After Caitlin Clark arrived, things abruptly altered. We're talking about a 500% rise in merchandise sales. 500%. The league saw a 40% increase in attendance, with some cities selling out games that formerly drew perhaps a few thousand spectators spread across enormous facilities. Franchises that were losing money all of a sudden turned a profit. One of the league's worst financial collapses. The Indiana Fever now have a waiting list for season tickets.
But why do you take a shot at the Golden Goose, Caitlin Clark? You guys were flying before she arrived on one of those airlines that made you pay for a cup of water. One of those airlines that is the planes are the color of a highlighter. Now you're flying private. Okay, if you're in a band and you're staying at the Motel 6 and you add a band member and now you're at the Ritz-Carlton, keep your issues to yourself. All right? You went from a Motel 6 in a sketchy part of town to a Four Seasons in the shopping district. Stop talking.
However, this is what actually energizes Cowherds. These same players are suddenly enjoying private aircraft, better lodgings, and more compensation after barely making ends meet on low-cost airfares. The league's financial situation has drastically improved, allowing players to enjoy privileges that were unthinkable just 2 seasons ago. However, some veterans continue to gripe about the individual who made it all possible.
I don't mind the T-shirts. I think you have leverage. I think you deserve more than 9%. But it's just misstep after misstep. It's time to grow up, girls. Like fast. Like this is the player that got you off the airline that was bright yellow. Right? She got you an upgrade to a better hotel as a band member.
Let's be honest about what transpired. By himself, Clark transformed this league from a nonprofit into a successful enterprise. Every time she performs, the TV ratings rise because they know she attracts viewers. Sponsors are splurging on the WNBA. Social media engagement has exploded. Young ladies are purchasing Clark jerseys more quickly than they can produce them, whether they choose to acknowledge it or not. Every player in that league is impacted by the ripple effect. This is the point at which Cowherd becomes extremely frustrated. He witnessed this change in real time and finds it incomprehensible that certain players are biting the hand that feeds them. Why would you be critical of the individual who brought about your victory when you've been fighting for decades and are finally winning?
I think they deserve a big raise, maybe not 50% of revenues, because NBA stars, there's a lot of them, and they move the needle. The WNBA stars, well, there's one that moves the needle. And here's the other thing to remember. Caitlin Clark's already rich. She made $11 million this year alone in endorsements off the court. So regardless of how these negotiations go, she's set. Nobody else is, right? So when somebody joins the band and everything gets upgraded, just be happy.
Cowherd's comparison of the league's evolution to moving from a Motel 6 in a dubious area of town to a 4-season location in the shopping district was spot on. Everything about Clark's contributions to the WNBA is encapsulated in that sentence. The respect from major sports media, the financial stability, the accommodations, and the care. Because one player gave women's basketball previously unheard of attention, everything improved. However, some seasoned athletes continue to act as though nothing has changed, stuck in the past. They are whining about the person who got them out of the Motel 6 while living in four-season luxury. Cowherd could no longer deny the harsh revelation made by the WNBA All-Star voting results. The voting process for All-Stars is rather simple. Players vote for the people they believe should be recognized, coaches elect reserves, and fans vote for their favorites. This is significant because All-Star choices have a direct bearing on legacy development, endorsement agreements, and how these players are remembered in the past. Being selected for the All-Star team, in particular, confirms the influence of young players and positions them for more possibilities.
I know you wanted your song to be the first one they played. You wanted to make up the set. I mean, it's not the t-shirts. You're going to do fine. I'd scale back on the Caitlin Clark angst.
Which guard do the fans think Caitlin Clark was the best? Where was she ranked by her fellow players? The ninth. The same players who benefited from her success rated ninth, including the league's top draw, the person in charge of sold-out venues and record product sales. The vote was also not close. There was a huge disconnect between player recognition and fan support.
Caitlin Clark finished ninth in player voting. In fact, she finished behind one of her own teammates in player voting for the All-Star game. The pettiness has no bounds. But it's interesting, for years, the WNBA players were pointing fingers. They were saying people are sexist, the media is sexist, we're not being promoted, we're underappreciated. And then they get the golden goose and they don't like what it looks like.
Let's be honest about the true significance of this ranking. It was unrelated to the basketball player's performance. Clark was setting records one after another and putting up astounding figures. All-Star recognition was validated by the statistics. This had to do with something quite different, something far more intimate. Consider other youthful sensations in the history of sports. When LeBron James broke onto the scene, veteran players recognized his talent, even if they didn't love the attention he earned. The tour veterans may not have enjoyed being overshadowed when Tiger Woods was a young player, but they valued his contributions to the game. The pushback appeared so blatant and trivial, which makes the Clark scenario feel different. As Cowherd saw these vote results, he didn't hold back. He termed it pettiness, which is precisely what it was. He brought attention to the fact that some WNBA players were displaying a total lack of gratitude for the individual who revolutionized their league. These participants were deliberately acting against their own interests, rather than adopting what he referred to as the golden goose.
Iowa girl, Indiana girl. Well, who knows, and I've said this for years, when the wave hits, ride it. You don't know what it looks like. Don't fight it. When Puka Nacua went in the 5th round of the Rams and they suddenly in camp went, oh, we just found a new number 1 receiver. He's better than Cooper Kupp. They didn't fight it. Did you think when you watched Tom Brady at the Combine, that looked like the GOAT? They had just signed Drew Bledsoe to a $103 million contract. That was a lot of money back then. And then a year in, they're like, we're going to go with Brady. They didn't fight it.
This is what aggravates me even more. Clark's popularity has directly benefited players like Kelsey Plum and A.J. Wilson. As more people become aware of the WNBA, their own profiles have expanded. Due to Clark's contribution to the league's revenue, their pay and working conditions were enhanced. However, she was ranked lower than players with much less influence when it came time to demonstrate professional respect through all-star voting.
You know, there's obviously a racial component here. The WNBA players, they just don't like what the wave looks like. They wanted to fly private. They wanted to be more popular. They wanted a better deal in the CBA, which they'll get. They wanted sold out arenas. They got it. They don't necessarily think it should be this. But again, you can't fight it. You just never know what success looks like.
Everything we witness on the court this season is directly related to this voting dispute. The blatant targeting, the hard fouls, and the needless contact all originate from the same spot. Some seasoned athletes find it difficult to accept that a sophomore altered all of their preconceived notions about their league. They are venting their annoyance by criticizing Clark for their own accomplishments during games and by voting for all-stars